Okay, start the meeting with the roll call. We have Bob Carlson, the first selectman, Selectwoman Nicole Porter, we also have Selectman Brett Mastriani, Admin Finance Officer Laura Brown, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Porter, Brown,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting started at 6:35. Okay, is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Non-agenda. And online, seeing none. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from May 21st. Okay, is there any public comment on non-agenda items?
Oh, the light doesn't come on anymore, sorry. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Town of North Stonington Board of Selectmen minutes held on May 21st, 2024 at 6:30 PM at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 5, selectmen comments. Are there any comments by either selectman this evening?
I'd like to make a motion to add an agenda item for Juneteenth regarding town hall and town services.
Yeah, where do you want to add that, Brett?
I feel like after 9,
After 9 and before 10 then, so like
Yeah.
9A.
9A.
Okay, so
I'll
is there a motion?
second.
Okay, so Brett motion to add a line item talking about Juneteenth in town being closed. Seconded by Nicole. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that'll be 9A on the agenda. Any other comments by selectmen? First selectman report, all I would say is we have graduation on the 14th. We have a tri-board meeting on the 10th, which is next Monday. And our next regular meeting is on the 18th, which I've invited the library to speak at. And also we'll have a discussion on speed humps on that day, as well as Civic Plus, who's gonna give us a presentation on possible new website for our town. That'll be in the next meeting on the 18th.
Yeah, can I just ask, what time are we meeting for the graduation?
Graduation, I believe, starts at 6, but I have to double check that. So we usually meet 15, 20 minutes before then. Are you walking? You are walking, right? You guys are walking? Yes, I think the procession usually starts, I think it's 6, so I can look
Okay.
for you. Who's graduating? I mean, do I just have a graduate? No. Okay, number 7, relocation of war monuments. So it's been something we've talked about for quite a while. We did an executive session, a community conversation back in January of a year and a half ago. And that was one of 3 things that the town seemed to be behind, is moving the monuments. And you know, we just had the parade, and after the parade, I spoke and I mentioned the moving of the monuments. So now that I mentioned, I guess we ought to do it. So I think it would be a nice thing for the town. I think moving them to one spot where we can all appreciate them. There's a couple of granite benches I'd like to move there also. I know I talked to Eric Castor, who's both a veteran and a landscaper, who's offered help, plus our own guys at the garage. We just have to make sure if we do it correctly. Make sure that if they're not on footings now, don't put on footings later, because if they, apparently with the way the ground could heave, could cause an issue we do not want. I can just see me breaking one of those things after they've been there 100 years, right? So I don't want to be that guy. So we'll, I think we'll move, I would like to have a landscaper, somebody like DJ Noise or someone that does a lot of landscaping, to advise on how to set them up. So they're just not in a straight line. There might be a big, if I give him the, what's there now, which is the flagpole on 1 monument, 4 monuments and 2 benches, we can probably come up with some scenario. I'd also like the town to fix that grass area up a bit. If it's gonna have monuments, it should be nicer. And I talked to the garden club and the Grange as far as decorating the monuments from time to time with wreaths and so on and flowers. So speaking of the Grange, I don't know if you noticed that the flower pots in front of fire station. The old fire station had been done. I gotta take a picture and put that on social media. So she told me not to, but I will anyway. So is there any comments on the relocation of the war monuments? Any reason why we shouldn't entertain doing it? I'll take public comment on this too, but is there nothing that you can see why we shouldn't do it? I mean, where they are now, you can't see them, you know.
Yeah, so, is it something that we should talk to the Historical Society about, or no?
Well, I've talked to Dick Seeger, and actually he thought it was a great idea, and he's one of the guys advising on how to place the monuments and how to do it correctly. So I don't think that's an issue. Charlie Smith did talk to the state to make sure that there was no reason, if we move them off Route 2, could we still put the parade on Route 2? Because, you know what I'm saying, the parade goes on Route 2 because there's monuments. And he said, from what he could tell, there was no reason why we couldn't move them. Because I don't think we pulled a permit for that parade in like 15 years, so. We've been doing it for so long now, 57 years and counting, so.
And
But,
then
go ahead, I'm
the
sorry.
only other thing that I would say is, completely in favor of it. I just want us to think about those two entrances into town, and is there anything else that we want to do as we remove those and move them?
So I thought of that. So Mike, when he was here, he put those, I had suggested we put signs up saying entering the village. And, he took me up on that suggestion, had those oval signs made, they cut in a dark green, a hunter green, but they're in shadows. They're a little bit on Main Street coming in from the Red Onion. It's in a little ways on the right.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one
okay.
coming in from Main Street across from Chucky's. It says now entering historic village. I'd like to take those signs where they are now, which you can't really see them. They're in the shade of the trees, and move them out to where the monuments are, at least on Main Street. And then keep those areas decorated with
Yeah.
flowers and so on.
Yeah.
We not just don't leave them barren by any means, but I did think of that as well.
So do you need a motion on that, Bob?
I guess we can vote, but I would also open up, is there any public comment on this? Any reason, John, any veterans out there that think we shouldn't move the monuments from Route 2 to make a monument circle and at where we did the demo? I'll always like to hear from, Will, you're a veteran too, right? You know? I know John is.
John Gatchone, North Wesley Road. I think it'd be a great idea. I
Oh,
heard
good.
people at the parade over by the Red Onion out there saying the same thing, like it would be great if they were located one area. I don't know whose families were there, but there was two there. And they said the same thing, it'd be great if there were one place. So they could take their
Yeah, thanks, John. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that until my son Andrew had to do a project for school saying, find the monuments and what are they for? Where are they? I said, what monuments? So now we know.
I
Okay.
also think we're moving them to an area where it's safe to look at them. It's not, I think
Right.
people are uncomfortable even going up to look at them where they are, being that close to Route 2. So it'd be nice that people could go on up and read what they say and see them up close.
And maybe there's another way to decorate those entrances with maybe a, like a small, like split rail fence or something, you know, just a couple of sections with the entering the village
Yeah.
sign. So we probably the garden company could probably come up with some ideas if I gave them a project. I bet you that was something they might, either them, the Grange or the Lions or somebody who likes to do those things, so.
I agree.
So
Okay.
I'll make a motion to move the two war monuments to the circle at 298.
There's 4.
Four?
You want to move all 4?
Where are the other?
Where are the other ones?
Well, see, this is what I'm getting at here. So there's one at the Red Onion.
Yeah.
There's 2 across the street from the fire station, and there's 1 across from Chucky's.
I thought the
We-
fire
we
station
wouldn't-
By
one.
the rec?
No, they're
Oh,
on
you're
the
right.
town side. We walk by 3 of them when
Straight
we
down.
we're marching the parade, we go by 3 of them. They're on the village side of the road.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll make a
Okay,
motion
okay.
to move the 4 war monuments to the circle at
Yeah.
298.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, so now that I have that approval, I can start talking to Eric Castro about possibly getting it done. Perfect. Okay, next we have as we know, we had an issue probably about 6 or 8 months ago where the Conservation Commission Chair, Bill Ricker, had saw that there was some cutting being done in the conservation easement off of Swanton Hill Road. And we went back and forth with both the tribe and with Hull Forest Products, how we're gonna handle that. And how it turned out was that we allowed them we told them cease and desist what they're doing at that point. We walked it a few times, all three of us. And then I think Bill and at that time, our admin finance officer, Christine Dias, got into a golf cart and found another section near the Lake Viles Golf Course that had also been disturbed. So the question is now, Hull Forest Products has come back, Chris is here, he's gonna speak about, they want to start the project again, but using what's the guidelines that's given to them by the state forestry, as also doing, what they consider good forest husbandry. So also Sue Collins here tonight, our planner, to speak on that. So we're gonna get some good information. So Chris, I assume that's you, right? Okay.
So yeah, my name is Christopher Lemery, forest technician with Hull Forest Products. And yesterday was actually just my year anniversary, so it's good that I'm here to show my face, because I'm planning on being with Hull for a very long time, if not the rest of my career. I'm here today to present and request the continuation of a timber harvest operation on a tract of land, a part of the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation, otherwise known as Lake Vile LLC. This harvest would be in a portion of the conservation easement through the town of North Stonington, and this harvest is meant to meet the goals of the tribe by improving the overall health of the forest ecosystem, eradicating invasive species, as well as releasing wild blueberry where appropriate. Timber harvest prescription for this operation is a selective / group selection, harvesting on 49.87 acres out of 56.87 acres. The harvest is targeting unhealthy, diseased, poorly formed, as well as overmature species. And all den and nest trees will be left for wildlife considerations. There will be no harvesting in wetlands, but there will be harvesting in the upland review area. Pre-existing roads will be used for the operation, and no new roads will be created except new skid roads. There will be a stream crossing, as you see on the map. You guys have the map in front of you. Off to the west area, one single stream crossing. I have a map, guys, one thing around. You'll see it, it's marked with a blue star there. That's our single stream crossing. All trees designated to be taken out will be marked with blue paint at or above eye level. And just yesterday I had finished putting up all the conservation easement sign boundaries off on the easement piece. If there's any questions, I'm glad to answer.
More questions? So can you give me the acreage again? What's there and what you're gonna disturb?
Yep, so basically there's 56 acres in total on the area that we're harvesting. There's only about 49 acres that we're harvesting. That's just because of the wetlands that are there. So we're obviously not going to be harvesting in the wetlands or operating in the wetlands.
Is that the only conservation easement that you're involved in right now, is the one on Swantown Road? There's no other ones around the golf course?
That we're involved in right now, yes.
So if you're gonna go to another easement area, you're gonna come back to the town
Sure.
and not just move on to another spot?
Yes.
How are you gonna treat that crossing of the brook, of the
The
stream?
crossing will be timber bridge mats. So basically it's two bridge mats, one laid vertically and another vertically on both sides of the streams, and then two horizontal.
Okay. Is it, have the selectmen, if they have any questions, and if you don't, I have members of the Conservation Commission here as well as our town planner.
So I just want to be able to fully understand. So you're asking, because, right, other than the conservation easement, we can't tell you, to my knowledge, what you can do with your own land, or what the Mashantuckets can do with their own land. They own it, they can do what they want with it. You're asking to also harvest on the conservation easements?
So the conservation easement was the one that had got basically
Stopped?
stopped about 6 or 7 months ago. And I'm just asking for requesting for the continuation of that. There's probably about 40,000 feet left, standing and already marked.
In the conservation easement?
Yes.
So I'm just
I actually
confused.
have a full map of the full conservation easement, if you guys
Yeah.
want to take a look at that.
So, but I'm confused because we went through all this months ago and we said no cutting on conservation easements. That's what the rules are. So I'm just a little bit confused about why we're,
So
being asked
that
now to
wasn't
approve.
exactly what the rules were. The rules were good forestry husbandry, and both, the state did bring state foresters up to explain what they were doing. We felt they were going above and beyond, because they created that road where they dumped, they cut the trees, they thought, in some areas they were clear cutting. And so that's why we had a cease and desist. But reading the easements, and that's why the town plan's there tonight to also go over that. I think that we have to reconsider, there's not a no-cut rule that I know of, reading the easement myself, but there's a good tree husbandry rule. And I think we just stopped because what we saw we thought was above and beyond what they should have been doing. I know the Conservation Commission wanted a no-cut.
Bob said the good tree husbandry is another word for that would be selective / group selection. So
Yeah.
it's not like a clear cut, it's not like a full scale land clearing job, it's a selective harvest. And like I said, it's selecting the worst trees out of the best trees, which is the disease, declining, poorly formed trees, as well as over mature trees that are ripe and ready to go, so that we can release them and allow the better formed trees, better vigorous trees to grow up into a new forest.
Yeah. And so the gentleman that we had been meeting with before you, and I appreciate you being here, when I toured, not knowing anything about good tree husbandry, it looked like clear cutting.
Yep.
There was nothing that told me we were being selective about which trees to cut down. I'm going to be interested to hear what the Conservation Commission says. If there is not a specifically designated no cut, don't touch the conservation easement, I have an
So
issue with it.
it's honestly, it's in the eyes of you, it would look like a clear. It's about basically selecting when you're out there and you're actually looking at the trees and you're looking at the healthier ones compared to the unhealthy ones. It depends on variability as well as intensity of the cut. In some areas, it could look more intense than other areas, and that's probably because a lot of that area is very poorly formed, as well as, diseased trees that needed to come out of there so that we can create a new cohort and get some regeneration on the ground so that we can basically have a rotational age of forests. And so typically, a normal person in the street would look at it and be like, oh gosh, this looks horrible, but it's really good sound forest management. And Hall Forest Products has been doing forest management in southern New England for 58 years now, and we're very proud of what we do. And our contractors are generational contractors, and they've been doing it for about 3 generations now.
And then am I allowed to ask what is done with the trees that are cut? Are they sold?
Yes, they're milled at our mill here, which is the largest mill in southern New England. And so what we like to do is we like to keep our wood local. So we, instead of going towards like other areas like South America where there's not enough conservation, environmental conservation, here there's a lot of environmental conservation, so we try to keep our wood local, as well as firewood too.
Cool.
I'm Susan Collins, town planner. We did pull the easements that were accepted by the town at March 2004. There's very specific talk about notice requirements, that when they're going to be maintenance, they have to give notice. other than when required to construct a golf cart house. And they also talk about, the cutting that's required by maintenance, filling, excavating, design. The idea is that you're not cheating, the condition of these areas. But there are reasons why to selectively harvest. Such as light, genetics have 3 different sets of lights or lawns or things that were going on in the past. So sometimes that your selective harvesting is based on that. You're trying to prevent light from what you're talking about firewood, I'm very familiar with, because we try really hard in this area not to create across the state line with firewood, because you're trying not to carry, bugs or light back and forth. Safe, environmental protection law. So I know. Here, I also have a copy.
So I do have a few questions as well. So have all those signs been put up? Do you know, the
Yes, I
easement
just
signs?
Finished putting those up, just yesterday, actually.
Okay, so I have to say that great for doing that, but it's a little disappointing that it's taken this long. Since when we did that initial meeting was, I don't even know the date on it, but it
About
was,
6 or 7
it was a
months
while
right?
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that agreement, it also says that, that we did that, that the selective cutting of timber conducted in any further cutting of selective timber is in accordance with a forestry management plan prepared by a third-party certified state forester. So you're referencing the one that was done in 2020 as the
By
forest.
capacity.
Well, in this email that we have, it says that they're scheduled through a natural resource conservation service forest management plan. So we haven't had one since 2020. You guys haven't done one since
Well,
2020.
that's because the forest management plans are typically 10 years.
Okay.
And every 10 years or so, a new forest management plan is updated. During those forest management plans, there is timeframes to meet the tribe's goals. And then once every timeframe is met, then a new forest management plan is
Gotcha.
created.
So I am a little concerned about that we stopped this from happening. And in our agreement, we talked about we wouldn't do anything further without another forest management plan. Now, it doesn't say whether we reference the old one or not, but the fact that we stopped it once before, and now we're doing the same forest management plan after we came up with that agreement, is a little concerning. My biggest concern, though, is that access road to get in there. When we walked it last year, that was pretty wide. So when you state that you wouldn't create any new roads, you'd all base it on existing or previous roads. So there was a disagreement whether that was a previous road or not. And we weren't on board that that was a previous road, the one that cuts wide right through that access point where the rock wall was. So I am concerned about moving forward in that road being used again, or further roads of that width being cut
It is
through
on
there.
the map. And Chris, could you reread that? Because that's not what he said. He said there'd be no more new roads except for the ones that he had to construct to get to the.
Yep, so basically the pre-existing roads will be ones that we're using for the operation. No new roads will be created other than skid trails,
Which is what
Right.
that is, correct?
which skid trail is completely different from a road. Skid trail
It's when you
is-
drop trees and you run
drop
across.
trees and creating corduroy to prevent erosion. And then, as foresters, what we like to call slash is preventing deer browse. And so that helps allow the seedlings. I've seen more seedlings grow in a skid road than I have anywhere else in the forest.
Right, but that skid row was like 20 feet wide.
You may be thinking about another.
I'm thinking about the road, when the rock wall was taken down and the road or whatever access was used up straight through. So if I.
Right
if
off
you
of
look-
Swantown.
So if
So
you, if you
didn't
look
he,
at this,
didn't he say that it was an old logging road?
So this would be the land. This
So-
is where we're landing the logs here.
yeah, that's across. So here,
Yep.
I believe that's the road. It was this area. And it came up and through like that.
Oh, okay, so, yep, so this, okay, so what you're talking about is the main skid road. Now, main skid road is used, to drag the logs out in one specific location, one specific road to get it to the skid, to get it to the landing. And so that's gonna have a little bit more impact as opposed to skid trails that are off of the main skid trail to grab the log and selectively harvest the logs. But it looks a little bit wider, because we have harvested around it, but also it's the more impacted road. It's not gonna be used as a road to, like a normal F-150 would be able to drive down. And
Right.
like I said.
Yeah, we walked it. It was pretty much clear cut that wide and there was some disagreements on the.
You gotta
Yeah.
think about the harvester is fairly wide. It's probably about 2 or 3 of these tables wide. And so they gotta be able to maneuver and drag the logs over the skid road. And like I said, that's gonna be the most impacted part of the road. But like I said, that's the only other road that we have constructed or going to construct. If there are new roads need to be constructed, it's only gonna be a skid trail. It's not gonna be a new road where we're laying gravel out or anything like that. And it'll all be regrown out with, new sequence.
And you figure it's 45,000 board feet and 40 cords? Is that?
Yes, sir.
Right, okay. All right, that's the only questions I have for right now. I'd like to hear from the Conservation Commission as well.
So I'd actually like to oppose that.
So the article I gave you is not a scientific article, but it's kind of a Reader's Digest summary of what the fungi do with the trees. And bringing heavy equipment into the forest to remove trees, compacting the soil, will have a severe adverse effect on the soil community. So what do these fungi do? They help the roots find water in places that are difficult to access water. You know, when a tree absorbs water and nutrients, it's just not the roots. It's the fungi with the roots feeding the tree. If you flip the page, they help the roots absorb nutrients. These fungi protect trees and shrubs. And they also help trees communicate to each other. If, for example, there's a gypsy moth infestation in part of the forest, the fungi help communicate that to other similar trees, and the trees that haven't been affected actually change their chemistry to help fight off whatever's attacking the trees. So these fungi are critical to a healthy forest, are critical to good tree husbandry and maintenance, and the process of cutting trees down and removing these trees cannot be considered required by good tree husbandry and maintenance. It's exactly the opposite of that. So my personal opinion is that no cutting should be allowed except for limited cases where you have an infected tree or an invasive tree. And even if you guys decide that some limited cutting is allowed, those trees should stay right where they are, shouldn't be dragged out.
Thank you. Chris, you want to talk about that?
Yes, I'd like to actually oppose that. So what he had just talked about leaving the diseased trees, leaving snags. As I had previously said, the all den and nest trees, including snags, will be left for wildlife considerations. He is very much 100% correct about leaving the diseased trees and it being a part of a healthy ecosystem. But that's not the goal of the Mashantucket Tribe Nation. They want to create a healthy, resilient forest. Now, when you drop a tree and you leave it, it creates nutrients and it puts it in the ground. He is 100% correct. But when you leave that tree, it releases carbon into the air. And so once you, just like a normal disturbance, like a wind event or a fire disturbance, selective harvest is actually mimicking that. And so selective harvest is mimicking a natural disturbance, which is actually creating resiliency of the forest. Now, he is 100% correct about the mycorrhizae and the fungi, but if you were to leave the trees on the ground, it would cause more carbon into the air as opposed to using that carbon and fixing it into a piece of lumber that we're all sitting at today. Now, another thing that he had mentioned was basically saying that the whole tree harvesting is not tree husbandry. If it's only harvesting the diseased trees, mycorrhizae and fungi are not the goal of the Pequot Tribe Nation. The goal is to create a healthy, resilient forest. And now healthy, resilient forests require disturbances, whether it be natural or human-made. And so with that being said, selective harvest is tree husbandry.
Okay, how do you answer the heavy machinery piece?
Thank you for bringing that up. So actually oak regeneration requires scarification of the soil. Without the scarification of the soil, you'll get species like birch as well as red maple, which are not what the wildlife is looking for, as well as not what the lumber market is looking for. And if you'll see areas that have not had scarification on the ground, you'll get a lot of sweet birch and you get a lot of red maple. And so with the scarification, especially out in Pennsylvania, I've actually was out there last year for a job. We did burning. And so we humans would go out there and we would drift torch areas and we would create a natural disturbance and we would specifically run through with heavy equipment on these areas, scarify the ground and burn it all to create a coal bed, as well as disturbing that seed in the bed that has been dormant for a very long time. Without that disturbance, without that natural disturbance or human-caused disturbance, those trees will not grow.
Okay. Bob, do you have a comment? Mm.
Bobby Mercy, I'm heard about this. I think- kind of asked myself, why? Why? And I did go and walk through the clear-cut path, a very wide clear-cut path, about 40 feet wide in some cases. And you're saying that's going to preserve and improve the health of the forest after you're done doing that? And then I'd ask, well, what about the forest around that? Does that also need the same treatment where you need to cut it down? And that will improve the health of the forest. The forest surrounding this intrusion is fine. And we thought we kind of put this to bed a while back. We thought everybody was happy that they had gone in and harvested a certain amount of trees, but yet you're going back and doing more. I guess I'd ask, what was the motivation to go back in and cut the trees? Was it to preserve the health of the forest, or are you trying to generate revenue? In any event, it is a conservation easement. When this conservation easements are set up with an agreement between the town and the landowner, and the landowner has great input into how that conservation easement will be treated in the future. And it's the responsibility of the town to be sure that those terms and conditions that are in that conservation easement are followed. So that's why we're here. That's why we're questioning what's going on here. Because in our view, the terms and conditions, as Steve pointed out in very good detail, the terms and conditions of that easement are not being followed. So we have great reservation about allowing further planting. I might also sort of admonish the selectmen to consider this. Connecticut state statutes, 47-42P. Municipality fails to comply with a dedication of land as open space, parkland, with the terms of conservation preservation restriction. The Attorney General may bring action to the Superior Court to enforce the public interest. Dedication. Keep that in mind. It could be. Walking up there, I just boggled my mind why this don't understand
Bob, quick question. So did the Conservation Commission get to meet on this yet and discuss
Not this
as a group?
specific instance, no.
Okay, so personally, I wouldn't want to vote on this until they actually had an official meeting to talk about it, discuss it, and make a
When you
vote
meet
and
again?
recommendation back to us.
Oh, so we meet on the third Tuesday, so we meet on the 18th, you must meet on the 20th. You must meet on the 20th because we meet on the 18th, that's a Tuesday. But you could have a meeting between now and then, correct? So you can get back to us on the 18th?
Bill will not be at our meeting.
No, but you could have a special meeting between now and the 18th. Okay, no, I agree with you, Brad. I think I want to hear what they have to say, but I will say this. So, Chris, and I love the fact that your personality is different than your predecessor. Okay. I will say, I think you say that Mashantucket tribe wants to have a good, healthy forest, and I agree, but I think there's more, as Bob mentioned, there's more to the story. I think they also are looking for a source of income. If they weren't, then they would have just walked away after this first episode where we actually paid our attorney fees, paid a small fine that we put into land acquisition. And I think some of the reason that happened the first time was we didn't have a planner. Now we do. So when the permission was asked, we didn't have someone, we just had an administrative assistant in the land use office. And then it was kind of discovered by someone who knew the chair of the Conservation Commission. And then he had us all out there walking around and really it was my first experience with conservation easements and what you can do and what you can't do. And as Nicole said, we saw what looked to be, in our eyes, clear cutting, so. I know that happens all around the state, but also, as Bob said, I'm aware of that, statute that if we do not manage our conservation easements and our open space correctly, we could be at fault in the eyes of the Attorney General's office. So I think it's best we try to always listen to something one night and vote the next time, gives the Conservation Commission a chance to meet. But I think too, that I know we keep saying that some are looking to create a more healthy forest. And I understand that part, but I also think it's a source of income. And I think when you're talking, what did you say, 40, how many board feet?
45,000.
I mean, so I know it's raw wood, but I'm just gonna be turned into milled wood, and there's some value to that. So I'm not gonna ask you how much it is, because it's none of my business, but I think there's some value to that. So I think that's part of the story also, because if it wasn't, why would they be going back?
So, one-
I think what the Mashpee want doesn't matter, what I want doesn't matter. What we need to follow is the wording in the deed. That's the law, right? So the Mashpee want to do something, they can do it as long as it is consistent with the wording in the deed. And so that's what has to be decided. They have a proposal, we have the wording in the deed, are they consistent, are they not consistent? I say they're not, he says they are. So, I mean, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road.
Yes, I don't disagree, except you can probably ask 4 different people, how do they interpret those words? And they might get 4 different answers. So, and that's the job of the Board of Selectmen, right? We have the town leaders and Conservation Commission is an advisory board to the Board of Selectmen. So we take whatever you say seriously, but we also want to not, I know in my position, I mean, I won't speak for the two selectmen. I also don't want to not allow someone to do something that's within the law, so we'll be interpreting those words, get the information that Chris gave us, information that you guys give us after your meeting. We'll come back and meet and vote on how we want to handle it. If we vote and it's not in favor, there's avenues that the tribe can go to the next step, right? They can get an attorney and fight our decision if that's what they choose to do. And if we choose to go forward, someone could then take it to the Attorney General and say, well, we think that North Stonington overstepped by not protecting the easement enough. So we'll do our due diligence and try to come up with the most fair, well-educated answer we can. But thank you.
I have,
yes, yes, you can. So I would actually just like to thank the Conservation Commission for being here today and getting their opinions. But the name of the commission is conservation. And now, but what Bob was saying was he kept alluding to preservation. Now, there's a difference between preservation and conservation, right? So preservation is you preserve the land and you do not touch it. A conservation easement is you manage the land with the needs of the people as well as the needs of the wildlife. So there is a complete difference between preservation and conservation. So you have to keep that in mind when you say preservation. It's not preservation.
Thank you, Chris. Nicole?
yeah, so, is Hull done, other than the timber on the conservation easement, are you done harvesting and thinning and, with everything else on their property?
So with the forest management plan, it has timeframes, and those timeframes include harvesting and areas and mitigating invasive species, and basically turning the composition out there now to a more basically what's the word I'm looking for? they're really looking to grow a composition of oak as well as the eastern red cedar out there. And so we're trying to change it out there because the eastern red cedar and the red oak are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Historical as well as, yes, it's just very important to them. It's a very, you know, there are trees that have been around here for a very, very long time. And so the cutting is going to be continued for the rest of the Mashantucket tribal nation's existence. Because in order to actually conduct forestry, in order to conduct forest management, there needs to be a rotational age of thinning. And so each rotation can either be from 10 to 25 to 40 years. And so every 10 to 25 to 40 years, there'll be another cut. And so that allows us to go in and capture the carbon on the stump, fix it into lumber, fix the carbon into lumber, and giving the trees that are healthier, better formed, as well as ready and vigorous to grow, and to create a new core or a forest underneath those trees. Now, as I can't actually, what was your name?
Steve?
Steve. As Steve said, he was a little worried about the den and nest trees as well as some of the disease trees, which he is 100% correct. That having those types of trees in the forest are a part of a healthy forest. Now, that's what us as foresters look for when we're out there. We're not marking any trees with a nest or a den or snags. Snags are very important to the wildlife, especially the barred owls that I see out there quite a bit.
All right, so, I'm sorry, I want to step on your
I had
toes.
one last question. Remind me of the acres in the conservation easement that if we don't approve for you guys to move forward on the conservation easement, how many acres are affected, that you would not be able to harvest? Like,
So
what is the conservation easement
the
again?
The easement on this, so that the entire conservation easement, as you can see over here on that piece of paper, is a larger easement than what we're harvesting. The entire conservation easement, actually, the maps actually. So that there is the entire conservation. The easement piece that we're harvesting on is 56.87 acres. Now we're harvesting only 49.87 acres due to the fact of the wetlands that are on the piece.
So can I follow, up, Nicole? You good?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So one question you just answered, you're actually trying to grow a more marketable tree down the road, be harvested 30, 40 years from now. Oak, you said. You'd rather have that than have some of the species that could grow like a birch.
It's not necessarily about the merchantable of the species, because certainly eastern red cedar is certainly not merchantable in the state of Connecticut.
No, but oak is, and you said that
Well,
what
oak
the lumber market would desire, correct?
Yes.
So this is basically, you're creating a harvesting farm of trees over the course of many years.
Well, the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation forest is considered to be a woodland, and a woodland is a working forest.
And how
working
big,
forests provide lots of benefits as well as wildlife habitat. And so the northern red oak isn't just for timber species, it's also a very good mast species. And so mast is the acorn of the tree. And so the acorns are very important to the wildlife that live out there now.
do you know what the total number of acres of woodland that Mashantucket's own in the state of Connecticut, mostly, you know? So it's acres, many acres. So if you have many acres of land, and there's many just in North Stonington, not just here, but in other parts of North Stonington, why not stay out of the conservation easements? Why not just concentrate on the non-conservation easement areas?
Good question. So what we have marked in the rest of the conservation easement are trees that should come out. Those trees are dying and declining in health. And so, like I said, we capture those trees instead of letting them fall on the ground, producing carbon into the air. So there's actually a new science that had come out, and it's called silviculture for climate change. Now, silviculture for climate change is harvesting trees and capturing that carbon and allowing more sequestration from the forest from younger trees. At a certain point in a forest life, the carbon is sequestered at a lower rate, the more and more and more it grows. And then at that point, it's a carbon storage. And so with the carbon storage, the forest is a little bit older. And so when we're capturing the trees that are economically and over mature as well as declining in disease, we're capturing that and putting it to lumber, but we're also creating areas for new growth to sequester carbon faster.
Okay, are you good for tonight? I've got more knowledge on trees than I've had.
So Chris, I thank you for your, for your knowledge. I admire, everything that you've brought forward. And I echo, Bob's sentiment in the fact that, it's, we appreciate your approach.
Thank you.
Good.
Just the last thing, so if we wait till the Conservation Commission meets, I'd also like to get a copy of that deed so we can read it.
Copy of the conservation deed?
Yeah, the one that they referenced.
Well, you have a
the
copy of it,
base-
don't you, Steve, that you can get to us? Conservation
Yeah,
deed,
we-
if not, I probably have it
And
myself.
Steve, you said you would like a summary as well.
And
Okay, I'll
when
do that.
the Conservation Commission meets, I'd ask that you guys discuss if there's any happy medium in between or any trees that, is there a certain amount that would be acceptable for them to weed through? Just a whole conversation based on it. I appreciate
So I think if we had the deed and a copy of that statute that you read earlier about the responsibility of the town, I think those would help. The statute that you read earlier on the one that we can get in trouble with the Attorney General if we don't manage this forestry, correct? Yes. I mean, it doesn't have to be now, just between now and the next meeting. That and as Brett said, the conservation easement deed, the original one between the Mashantuckets and the town of North Stonington. If Susan, you may have that also. Oh,
Now,
perfect.
is
Okay.
Is the Conservation Commission meeting open to the public, like someone like me, or, okay? Thank you. Thank you for your time, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Chris, if you want to find out when that is, when I see that that's put on the calendar, I can let you know that.
20th?
It is?
Yeah, I think we were asking to see if you can do a special meeting prior, so then we can talk about it at our 18th meeting. Correct.
All right,
Okay,
so I'll just keep a lookout for that.
great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you
you.
very much, Chris. Did you want this, Bob? This is what Susan.
I'll make copies for the three of us. I do have this, I'm sure, but I'll make copies of it anyway. Okay, if there's nothing else on that this evening. Will Mason's here. We're gonna talk about an idea that the Affordable Housing Committee came up with. And, there should be a map in your book. It looks like this. It's very yellow.
All right, Will Mason, I'm the chairman of the Affordable Housing Committee here in town. And we as a committee have scoured the town properties and been searching for places that we can create more affordable housing for people that have need in our town. People who have or children who'd like to come home after school, senior citizens who need to downsize from their homes, can't afford what they have. And as we've been looking, we found a lot number 5563, which is actually the lot that the school buses are sitting on right now. But it's a larger lot. It actually exits out onto Mystic Road and Route 2. It has a pond and then the bus lot in between there. We could create a driveway for emergency access, but the main driveway we would have out onto Mystic Road. That is our thought. We would like to build multi-unit homes or multi-unit buildings, which we'd have to do, get permission from zoning to do. we'd like to do, at least some of them, single floor, units. There'd still be 2-story buildings, but the unit itself would be single floor so that seniors who may have mobility issues, would be able to own a property there. We're thinking about building these units, 1, 2, and up to 3 bedrooms, nothing larger. And these units would then be sold condo style. So that there would be ownership. So as people better themselves out of what would be needed to qualify them for the affordable housing, they don't have to then move just because they got a raise. We'd like to deed restrict those units that are sold so that when the people do better themselves and decide to move and get a house somewhere else or another, somewhere else to live, the next person that comes in would also benefit from that qualified affordable house. Because it is on Route 2 and has access to bus route, that will give us points toward funding that we'll be looking into if you approve the lot. We're thinking about doing a land lease. So the town would maintain ownership of the land, and then we would sell the units themselves that are on them. So, any questions?
So very early stages.
We are very early.
I think we're gonna have, this is gonna be a process, right?
Absolutely.
So I think, first of all, a positive, it's in a much better location than the last proposal. It's on, like you said, it's on main thoroughfare, walking distance to the town, the village, walking distance to town hall, walking distance to the library, walking distance to a convenience store, pretty much walking distance to Ewart Farm. So I mean, it's convenient. And buses will stop on Route 2. So that's a plus. Not sure what we have for wetlands in here. It's like, I know there's a pond, but is there?
I was in visiting with Susan yesterday and we pulled up the wetlands map and there is nothing mapped as wetlands in that.
Have you, is it too early yet, or do you have an idea of how many total units you're talking about?
We have not discussed that yet. It is an 8-acre lot and we figure with the pond, taking the pond out, taking the bus piece out, we would still have 5 acres available to develop.
So I think that, and obviously the second will have a chance to comment in a second. I think, again, it's the beginning of a long process.
Yes.
I think you already have a step ahead of the last project that came our way. Do you have any thoughts, Brett and Nicole, on this?
Who owns the land right now?
The town of North Stonington.
So this is the land, so I have never actually been back where the buses park. You're saying there's how much property there?
8.05 acres.
Nicole, the buses are this part right here. This is Chucky's right here, up in the corner, those orange buildings.
So it's the lot that sits behind the houses in Meadowood, all the way out to Route 2, and have the gas station taken out of the corner of it.
What is that? What's that building where the square 42 by?
There's a little square that is privately owned. We have looked into it and we haven't discussed anything with the owner of that. But we can put an in driveway on one side of it and an out driveway on the other side, and we could leave that as a green space if we like. And there's enough room to do that.
So what are we looking to do as your next step? You're gonna continue talking about this in affordable housing?
Yeah. The next step, I mean, we would like to, if you approve us to at least research this more, then we would try and get the perk test done first, because if perk test doesn't come back that we could put a package plant or septic in there, then the project is done. And so that would be our next step, is to get a perk test done.
You do have town water there.
We do have town water, correct?
And
Our ask would be that we could have the town perhaps provide us with a backhoe and an operator to dig the hole for the perk test.
You'd have to get a hold of legislate for that, correct?
We would have to get a hold of it.
And
Correct.
if you could get us a price on what it would cost to do that,
Yes.
there's not much money in affordable housing, but there's some money in that line.
Right. I tried to get a hold of them in the last 2 days and I was not able to get a hold of it. Yeah.
So we as a board, nothing to vote on at this point. Do we think there's enough here to at least allow them to move forward and do more investigating of this possible project?
I mean, to get pricing on the perk test and other stuff, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to get more information, but this is so preliminary, it's hard to even
So
regarding.
how many, I know you already said, you don't know how many units you'd put in there, but that potentially makes a very congested area.
Perhaps.
All of Kingswood and Meadowwood.
Right.
And then multi-units literally right in its backyard. That's a very congested area, right at the intersection of Route 2 and Mystic Road.
Right. We would have a buffer from Route 2 with just a emergency access because of the bus lot and the pond. So we would not have anything to the front to Route 2 where it's overly visible. They
So
would
the gas station literally abuts right up to the pond.
to the pond, correct.
So where,
There's a strip of land between the bus lot and the pond.
but you're suggesting that the bus lots stay there, so that would not be displaced?
Correct. I mean,
And
this,
how does that impact? Where is the walking trails that we were talking about putting?
It doesn't impact that at all.
It
It's not-
doesn't
not-
that's the
impact
other
that
end,
at all.
that's the other end of Meadowwood.
But it does back up to the school playground areas.
Yeah,
It does. Back fence line of the Meadowwood roads.
Yeah, we might find some of those people have encroached on that property, we're not, who knows?
So also Carl, who was waiting to give a little comment on it, just sent a message, asked if I could let us know that, just be mindful that that might be needed for future expansion of the school system if need be. Especially can be used for septic and drainage for school system and or the Kingswood subdivision if anything were to happen with the septics and things over there. He just wanted us.
Take it
couldn't
under
stay.
advisement.
All right.
I would just say on face value, it's the best piece of land I've seen for affordable housing come to us so far. I was not in favor of the Winter Hill project.
Right.
It makes sense. We know that the town needs affordable housing and pretty soon the state's gonna stop mandating it anyway. We might not be here, but it's gonna happen eventually, so. And I understand Carl's point about future expansion, so that's all have to be considered. We're so far away from going to a town meeting and saying, can we do this? And there might be some discussion, do we really want to lease it versus sell it versus, I mean, there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions. The one thing I would ask though is would it be advisable for them to talk to planning zoning as well with initial, what they think? Because I know, yes, it's affordable housing, so there are differences. Our planners here, how does that work? Because multifamily isn't allowed.
It doesn't matter, because North Stonington is at 1% of their fair share of affordable housing under 8-30G. They can basically do whatever density they want, as long as they meet requirements of restrictive covenants, deed restrictions, that were long-term affordability restrictions on those properties. It's not something that happens for 2 years or 3 years. It's something that happens with a restrictive covenant that carries for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And that's going to be highly dependent on the type of funding that you're going after. Each different type of funding may have different rating and ranking systems, and how long those covenants reach for can give you more points towards those things. You also, there are still a few reasons that you can sort of get out of 830G, so to speak. But that's usually things like fire protection.
Right.
In this case, where you're going to have, access from two major roads, that's not likely to
Right.
occur.
And I guess my point on it was, since it's the town looking to do this, a town commission, it's not a outside
Yeah.
person coming in to try to force it down our throat, that maybe it's just a conversation to be had to how we can do it together, and does that work out? Because then the next question is, are we looking to put this out to bid and say, hey, we have this land available, put out bids for someone to construct it and manage that? Or are we looking to construct this, the town itself?
Currently, we would try and put it out to bid for someone to build, where we would manage the project though.
There are lots of different ways that you could do that.
She's got great ideas.
A lot of, I've seen it done with land leases where the town retains the land underneath, takes a nonprofit housing provider and, you know, they do the land, we do the land and they do the building. That actually makes it more affordable in some sense because you're taking the land price out, which in Connecticut is usually about half the price, typically, you know, around. So that helps the affordability.
So if we get the perk test, then we can
Then you
go
can
from there to
decide.
see if it's even
And that
viable.
might be a
Right.
good driver of how much density you can actually put there. The fact that there is city water is helpful because you're not, you know, restricted by well distances. 'Cause that's often one of the things that makes it really tough, putting smaller lots and, part of what makes things affordable are by making.
Got it. Okay, Will, thank you.
Thank you.
No other, Nicole, you have a question? I'm sorry, your mic's on. So, okay. Okay, with that said, I'd like to, have a motion to go into executive session.
Nope, we got
Oh,
Juneteenth.
Oh, sorry, 9A.
I
Yeah,
added that.
Yeah,
to the
sorry,
agenda.
Brett. I
No
stepped
worries.
on your toes there.
So looking at how Juneteenth is a federal and state holiday now, and some members of the town hall have mentioned it over the past few years. And we talked about that was kind of in between our contract negotiations, between when it came a federal and a state then federal. So it wasn't in our last negotiations, which is something to be mindful of. We are one of the few communities that don't observe it yet. But based on my research, it was something that was negotiated in contracts either before or after the fact. So I would like to entertain us observing it for the next 2 years with an MOU that says that would be part of our future negotiations for our contract that's up in 2025.
Is there, so, you know, my world of healthcare is
Yeah, you get
very
no days off. I get it.
different. Get anything off. Is there, a statute, that says that a municipality has to abide by the federally recognized holidays?
Nope.
So all the towns, if you actually just, as I started researching it more, there was an article in the day that Norwich just did it yesterday. Acknowledge it as a town holiday. And then that's what you have to do. You have to acknowledge it as a town holiday and make it a town holiday. But since our negotiations on our contract isn't up until 2025, so that I'm sure spring, probably before spring, Bob will start negotiating that. I do think it doesn't, it's not a great look that either, that we are just not even talking about it as now that it's a federal holiday as well. And it might be a negotiation at that contract to say, well, okay, well, we're gonna give up this because we're making that permanent, but I think for this year and the next June that we do it under an MOU to
So,
allow that.
help me understand the floating holiday.
So the floating holiday is a day that they can take anytime they want. Typically, it's taken to make a 3-day weekend into a 4-day weekend. So this year, they took July 5th, because July 4th is on a Thursday. So it gives them Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. They, last year they took it I think around Christmas. So, no, actually they took it July too, because July 4th was on a Tuesday, so they took that as a Monday. So that's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So that's the floating holiday. And when we talked in the negotiations 2 years ago, we asked, well, you can have Juneteenth, which day you want to give up? And so would you give up the floating holiday? I said, no. So, well,
Well, that was going to be my
I said,
suggestion.
is there another day? No, they would never give that up. That's their favorite holiday because they can put it pretty much anytime they want and turn it, afford it.
And how is it decided? Is it recognized as a full town? Like, how do
No,
do you
no.
all throw a note in the ballot
It's,
box that
it's, the-
says we want this
it's
day off?
the, town employees. So typically in the past, the Steelworkers Union, which is the town garage, has always decided, and the town hall goes along with it. So it's also for this highway department. It's not just town hall. So it's, but it'll
Yeah.
also include any other town employee, whether it be the animal control officer, rec commission, fire marshal, anyone that's part of the payroll.
Now,
You guys,
some towns also do it as, other non-essential employees have it off. So there are stipulations you can put in it, but I haven't found many towns around us that don't, observe it right now. It's interesting, Stonington observes it for the town, but actually that's also their last day of school this year. Now, we don't observe it for the town, but the school would have it off.
well,
if
yeah, but
they were in
school
session.
finishes before that.
Right.
So, and again, as far as essential personnel, we don't have a police force or a full-time fire company. So we don't have those really essential personnel in case of an emergency. I did, after talking to Brett, he sent me the email today about when he wanted to add this. I did contact my Farm 5 group, which we're getting together the end of June. I heard back from Volantown, Griswold, and Preston, and they all have it as observed as a holiday. I-
But do
I
they
didn't-
also have the other 13 that we're recognizing? I mean, we're talking 2 weeks off.
Yeah,
We're
so-
talking 14 days off.
Again, you're coming from a position of, no days off, so this is
No,
part of.
we recognize the major holidays. 14 just seemed excessive to me. It has absolutely
as Brett-
nothing to do with Juneteenth. It has everything to do with 2 full weeks off.
So I think as Brett mentioned, though, to do the MOU for these 2 years and go to negotiations next spring, which won't kick in until July of 2025, even though we're doing it in the spring of 2025. To do an MOU now, it actually is a bargaining chip to something and say, hey, we gave you this extra day now, either give us one of your days back, or is there something we can do with on another part of the contract? There's other parts of the contract we can talk about. So it helps us when it comes to negotiations, because now there was a situation we got into recently about something to do with the contract. I think we put a good step forward to say, hey, we're gonna add, and now we're doing this again. So we're, the town, without being asked, we're doing things that benefit the employees, which could be helpful when we start to negotiate next spring.
So Brett, are you suggesting that we would recognize this Juneteenth?
Yes. And that's why I brought it up for this meeting instead of the next one. But I think it's always, especially that it's a new holiday, that when we don't recognize a federal and state holiday in our community, I think we should at least be discussing it.
So I have no problem with doing an MOU for at least this year, and it gives us more time to discuss it for next year.
Yeah, that's true too.
And then we can bargain next spring to see if it's gonna be permanent or not. But I think for this year, with all the surrounding towns, all our abutting towns, do it. Yeah, I didn't hear from Sterling, but they really don't abut anyway, but of the abutting towns, everyone does it but us. So we'd be that one person in the middle, one town in the middle that didn't do it.
Actually, I don't see it on the Stonington calendar, but I'm pretty sure I saw it somewhere earlier.
They celebrated it last year, actually.
Okay.
So, anyway, so
So.
are you looking to have a motion to do
Yeah,
an MOU for this?
So I'll make a motion for an MOU, and I like your idea, just for this year. So it gives us more time to look into the process to recognize Juneteenth as a holiday this June.
Okay, I'll second it. Any other discussion?
The only other discussion is, it would be interesting to talk to the highway department to see how they would handle the transfer station, if they would do that like they do any other holidays that fall on the transfer station open day. Cause that, I'd hate to have an uproar from residents as well, because they weren't prepared that the dump was gonna be closed on this.
So except for the very major holidays like Christmas and New Year's, what they usually do at the transfer station is they work that day, but then they take the following Tuesday off, because that's the day the transfer station is closed. But they still work because they move material and they clean out the bargain shed, and so that's how they've done that in the past. So we do, it doesn't affect the residents as far as trash. And then everybody kind of gets the fact that we're gonna be closed on like a 4th of July, Christmas, the major holidays, so everybody expects that. Okay, discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstention, 3-0. Okay, so we'll write the MOU. And get that over to the, union. Laura?
You'll need to find me a job at the town hall.
Well, when you retire,
It's
there
the
may
whole
be-
healthcare.
when you
field.
retire,
It's
there may be an opening, I'm not sure. So, okay, so that's that. Anything else on 9A?
No.
Then I would move that we vote to go to an executive session. I'd like to invite, Admin Finance Officer Laura Brown into that meeting. Also, IT Director Quentin Chardonnay, and Quentin, is there anyone that you wanted to invite into the executive session? No, okay.
A second?
Okay, so all those in favor of moving into executive session, say aye.
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 Okay, we gotta go into executive session. We'll shut our microphones off. Yeah, but There's no, we're not doing it tonight. No, no. We'll just leave it on there. Bye, Quentin, thank you. No, we just leave it on there every month in case there is some, because it has been, so. Just a reminder. All right, so there's no, I have nothing in vacancies and appointments.
So now that we're out of executive session, I think we just have to say there's no action.
There's no action. Public comments, nobody's online anymore, we're sleeping. Next meeting is June 18th, but really our next meeting is June 10th, which is Monday.
At what time is that one at?
I believe that's a 6 o'clock meeting.
Well, I just need to review,
In that June
so
10th
June
meeting
10th
is
is
tri-board,
the tri-board.
and that's being chaired by the Board of Finance.
Yep, that's at 6 o'clock.
Yes,
Okay, and then what, and then the 18th
just a regular meeting on
is
the,
our regular.
and
Got it.
I mentioned to you who might be there to do presentations already. The library,
Yes.
speed humps, and he wants to have it the guys with the new website, which is a much better looking website than what we have.
Oh, and the rec commission,
What about it?
that's when they were gonna report back to us regarding their vendor policy.
Okay, yeah,
Remember,
yeah.
we talked to that. And probably the trees, right?
We could talk about.
Is that why they
yeah,
were gonna do a
but-
special
yeah.
meeting prior to that one?
The trees,
The whole,
the whole,
so the conservation commission
Yep.
with their,
so that needs to go on the 18th agenda. is
Yeah,
what you're
sounds
saying.
like it'd be a good long night.
I'll pack a dinner that
Yeah.
night.
Starts at 6:30, so you'll have some time.
right, so I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned at